I came home quietly that evening, not because I was tired, but because lately my own house no longer felt like a place where my voice was needed. I unlocked the door slowly. The sitting room light was on. Ada was there. She didn't see me. Her back was turned, phone pressed to her ear, laughter escaping her lips, soft, careless laughter. The kind of laughter that tells you someone feels free enough to speak the truth. I stopped walking. I wish I hadn't. Honestly, girls, I regret marrying him. My heart skipped. For a moment I thought she was talking about someone else. She had to be. But then she said my name, and the next word that came out of her mouth shattered me. I stood there, breathing, but not alive. Her friends laughed on the other end of the call. They encouraged her. They added more words. And my wife, my Ada, agreed with them. I didn't shout. I didn't walk in. I didn't defend myself. I simply stood there, listening to the woman I loved slowly explain to strangers why loving me was a mistake. My hands shook, not with anger, with heartbreak. I turned around quietly and stepped outside again. She never knew I had come in. That night, something in me died. Before I continue my story, let me ask you something. Have you ever been loved loudly, but destroyed quietly? If stories like mine touch your heart, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And in the comments, tell me, do words hurt more than actions? Now sit with me, and let me tell you how I met Ada, how I loved her with everything I had, and how the woman I called my home slowly became the place where I felt most alone. I remember the first time I saw Ada like it was yesterday. I was standing outside that tiny bakery near my apartment, waiting for the bus, my hands deep in my worn coat pockets. She walked past, humming softly, her head tilted slightly, eyes bright with some kind of quiet hope that I had never seen before. Something in me stopped. I don't even know why, but I felt like I had to meet her, like the universe had pressed pause just for that moment. I walked a little faster, pretending I was late for something, until I was close enough to hear her laugh at a joke I didn't hear. I said, "Excuse me, hi. I'm Kunle." She turned, startled, and smiled at me, the kind of smile that lights up even the darkest corners of your chest. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Ada." It was simple, nothing fancy. But from that simple moment I felt something shift inside me. We talked for maybe 10 minutes, standing on the cracked pavement, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and fried akara. She told me she was studying fashion design, dreaming of making clothes people would actually notice, people would remember. And even in that tiny, messy bakery alley, she spoke like her dreams were already real. I wanted to protect those dreams. I wanted to be part of them. It started quietly, almost imperceptibly. Ada reconnected with some old friends, women she used to study with, women whose lives had taken a different path. They were married, yes, but to men with bigger cars, fancier homes, designer clothes, and endless money. At first I didn't think much of it. Friends reconnecting is normal, right? But soon I began noticing the little things, small, almost invisible shifts in Ada's tone. The way her laughter changed when she spoke to them, the way she looked at me when she hung up the phone after talking to one of them. One afternoon she came home smiling, her phone still warm from the conversation. "Kunle," she said, tossing her bag on the couch, "you won't believe what Chinyer said today." I looked at her, waiting. She said, she laughed lightly, scrolling through her phone, "You're still managing on this salary? Other men spoil their wives, you know. Can you imagine that?" I just laughed. I smiled, trying to match her tone, but something inside me tightened. "Oh, did you tell her?" I began, but she shook her head, waving her hand. No, I just laughed it off. You know me. I didn't even think about it. I wanted to say something, to defend myself, to remind her of everything I did for us, every penny I saved, to make her happy. Every night I stayed awake, thinking about our future. But I didn't. Instead, I just nodded, forcing a smile. "Good. I'm glad you didn't take it to heart." She laughed again, slipping past me to the kitchen. "Kunle, you worry too much." But I did worry. I worried because these weren't the only comments. There were others, small, subtle, almost polite. "Kunle's very hard-working," one of them said. "But it must be hard, right? Some men just spoil their wives completely." Ada had laughed a little too loud, and I noticed that she didn't defend me this time, not like before. That night I sat on the balcony, staring at the city lights, and asked myself quietly, almost as if speaking to someone else, "Is my love not enough?" I remembered the nights I stayed awake, counting the little money I could spare for her sketches the mornings. I left early for work so she could sleep a little longer the weekends I spent, helping her practice stitches and patterns the way. I cheered for her every little victory, even when no one else seemed to notice. Was that not enough? Days passed, and the laughter on the phone became routine. Ada would call them after work, talk endlessly about their trips, their purchases, their husbands' cars. Sometimes she would even sigh after hanging up, a tiny, wistful sigh that I couldn't ignore. And then the comparison started, subtle at first, like whispers I almost didn't hear. "Kunle, don't you think I could try something new?" Chinyere said she's thinking about investing in a small boutique. I froze. "A boutique?" I asked, trying to sound supportive. "Yes," she said, eyes sparkling. "I mean, maybe it's silly, but she made it sound so easy." And she said, with a partner who has resources, "It's really simple." I nodded, forcing encouragement. "If it's something you want, I'll support you." But inside me, a small seed of fear began to grow. Not fear for me, not fear of losing her, but fear of losing the us we had built together. Every word she said, every laugh she shared with them, felt like a little erosion, like our foundation was slowly being chipped away by whispers I couldn't stop. And then the comparisons became more personal, more frequent. Other men would just, "Take care of this for me," she said one night after a call. I smiled, held her hand, and whispered, "I'm here." "I'm trying my best," but she looked away, a faint shadow in her eyes, and my heart cracked. I tried to shake it off. I told myself it's just a phase. She's caught up in excitement, in the glamour of other lives. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. The Ada I had known, the girl who told me my little apartment was perfect because we were together, was still there, but she was quieter, more restless. And I could feel the weight of those seeds of doubt she hadn't even admitted to herself yet, slowly taking root. That night I stayed awake longer than usual, watching her sleep, wondering if my love would ever be enough to remind her of what we had before the world, before her friends, before the comparisons crept in and started whispering into her heart. I didn't know it then, but those small comments, those tiny laughs, were the beginning of the storm that would one day shake everything we had built. I remember that evening like it burned itself into my memory. I had come home earlier than usual, hoping to surprise her, maybe share a quiet dinner together, talk about our day. The moment I stepped into the house, I froze. The light from the living room spilled across the floor, warm but deceptive. Ada was sitting on the couch, phone pressed to her ear, her back turned to me, laughter spilling into the room. Not the kind of laughter that makes your chest light, not the kind that makes you smile, but that careless, easy laughter of someone who feels completely free to say anything without consequence. I stayed quiet, just a shadow at the doorway, listening. "Honestly," she said, her voice light, teasing even, "sometimes I don't know. I feel like Kunle isn't ambitious at all." I froze. My heart stopped for a beat. I wanted to step forward, to defend myself, to shout that I worked my fingers to the bone, that every little sacrifice I had made was for us, that every sleepless night I had endured was for her. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I just held my breath, trying to stay invisible. Ada laughed again, a little too loud this time, almost a musical taunt. "I mean, I love him, yes I do," she said. "But sometimes I feel like I made a mistake. I just feel it, you know?" There was a pause on the other end of the phone. I could hear her friends, their voices bright, almost conspiratorial. "Oh, Ada," one of them said, laughing softly, "you deserve better. You really do. Don't settle for less than you should have. Life is too short." "Yes, seriously," another chimed in. "If someone truly loved you the way you deserve, things would be different. Don't be afraid to, I don't know, aim higher." Ada laughed again, a little nervously this time, but she didn't defend me. She didn't say a single word to push back, and my chest, it felt like it was being squeezed slowly, painfully, from the inside. I could feel my own blood pounding in my ears, but I stayed quiet, rooted to the spot. I wanted to say I am ambitious. I work every day to make our life better. I love you more than you will ever know. But the words stuck in my throat. Every memory of us, every late night, every sacrifice, every little thing I had done to show her my love, suddenly felt invisible. "Yeah," Ada said softly, almost whispering now. I guess sometimes I think about what life could be like with someone else. Just easier, you know?" The words didn't land like a slap. They landed like 1,000 tiny needles, each one piercing a piece of my pride, my love, my hope. And still, I didn't move. I didn't interrupt. I couldn't. All I could do was listen to the woman I had loved more than life itself, explaining to strangers, encouraged by their voices, egged on by their laughter, why I wasn't enough, why I had somehow failed her, why she might be better off without me. I remember standing there, shaking slightly, my hands cold. I wanted to turn away, to run, to scream, but I didn't. I wanted to call her out, to confront her, to remind her of every little thing I had done, every tear I had held back, every night I had prayed for her dreams. But instead, I whispered to myself quietly, so quietly that even I had to strain to hear, "I loved you. I loved you with everything I had. And this is what I get in return." Ada hung up the phone eventually, still smiling, still oblivious. I stayed in the shadows, my heart broken in ways I didn't even know were possible. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if love was ever enough, if sacrifices were ever enough, and if words, just words, could destroy everything I had built with my heart. I realized then, more clearly than ever, that this wasn't just about ambition. This wasn't about mistakes. This was about respect, about appreciation, about trust. And the truth? Those were things I couldn't demand. I could only hope for them. I need you to understand something. I wanted to love her still. I really did. Every part of me screamed to hold on, to fight, to remind her that what we had was rare, something worth protecting. But somewhere along the line I realized I couldn't anymore. I could love, yes, but not blindly. Not when love itself had begun to feel like a punishment. I started small, almost imperceptibly at first. I stopped sharing my thoughts with her. The dreams I once whispered in the quiet of our bedroom, the fears I used to voice late at night, the little triumphs I wanted her to celebrate with me, I kept them to myself. I thought maybe if I withdrew a little, if I stopped offering my heart on a plate, she would notice. She didn't. I stopped talking about my feelings altogether. If she asked, "How was your day?" I said, "It was fine," even when it wasn't. If she asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded, smiled, and carried my worries silence. I wanted to spare her, maybe even protect her, but deep down, I was protecting myself too. Every word I withheld was a piece of my soul retreating, a wall slowly rising between us. I started working longer hours, longer than I needed, longer than was reasonable. Late nights at the office, early mornings before she woke. Anything to escape the house where her laughter on the phone, her subtle comparisons, her friends' encouragement of her discontent had become unbearable. Some nights I slept on the couch instead of the bed, pretending I liked the distance, pretending it was temporary, but it wasn't temporary. I was slowly learning to live with the absence of her affection, even when she was physically there, and she complained. Not to me, no. That would have been direct, honest. She complained to her friends. I could hear fragments sometimes when she thought I wasn't listening, when she laughed too loudly or slammed a drawer, thinking the noise would cover the words. I just don't know if he even cares sometimes. I'm tired of explaining everything to him. Some men just understand women. He doesn't get me. I could feel my heart crack each time. I wanted to shout, to say, "I'm here. I am right here, loving you, sacrificing for you, staying awake, praying for your dreams." But I didn't, because somewhere my dignity, my pride, and my love was quietly fading. I couldn't lower myself to beg for acknowledgement, to demand appreciation. I had given everything, and she didn't see it. And the worst was watching her enjoy the company of those who encouraged her disrespect. Her laughter with them, her excitement when they agreed with every critique she had of me. It was like watching a blade slowly turn in my chest. I loved her, yes, but I was no longer the center of her happiness. They were. Their voices, their opinions, had become louder than mine in her world, and I could do nothing but retreat further into silence. Some nights I would sit in the dark living room, staring at her sleeping, wondering how it had come to this. How did my love, my patience, my sacrifices become invisible? How did the woman I gave my everything to begin laughing about me to strangers, encouraged by them to believe she deserved better? I didn't know the answer. I only knew that each laugh, each careless word, each subtle encouragement from her friends was slowly eroding the foundation we had built. I didn't stop loving her. I stopped showing it in the ways she could see. I stopped opening my heart fully because every time I did, it felt like handing her the very thing she had begun to dismiss. And so I worked, I retreated. I held my silence like armor. I slept on the couch while the bed grew cold beside me, a symbol of everything we had lost without a single fight. I wanted to tell you all this directly, because maybe someone out there will understand. Love is powerful, yes, but even the strongest love can be quietly defeated by disrespect and the approval of others. I wanted to fight. I wanted to love. But I couldn't anymore, not in the way she deserved, and not in the way I deserved either. The night I decided to leave, the house felt smaller than ever. The walls, once warm with laughter and shared dreams, now seemed to close in on me, pressing against my chest, whispering reminders of everything I had lost. I didn't say a word. I didn't announce my intentions. There was no confrontation, no dramatic scene, no anger. I knew by then that words wouldn't change anything. They never had. I sat at the edge of the bed, a single lamp casting long shadows across the room, and pulled out a notebook. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of a heart that had loved too much and been slowly hollowed out. I began to write, each word carefully chosen, each sentence a final gift of honesty. Ada, I loved you loudly. You destroyed me quietly. I paused, rereading it. The words felt heavy, almost unbearable, but they were true. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every whispered prayer I had ever said for her happiness, all of it had been met with laughter in the ears of strangers and encouragement that eroded the love we shared. I wrote slowly, deliberately, because I wanted her to understand, not to blame, not to fight, but to see what had been done to both of us by careless words and unguarded hearts. I packed my essentials quietly, folding my clothes with precision, slipping my shoes into a bag without disturbing the stillness of the room. My wallet, my few keepsakes, the small mementos of our life together, each carefully placed, each carefully chosen. Nothing more, nothing less. I didn't want to take the past with me. It wasn't mine to carry anymore. As I zipped the bag, I looked at her. She was in the living room, phone in hand, still laughing at some conversation I wasn't meant to hear. Her eyes were bright, her smile oblivious. She had no idea the weight of my heart, the cracks that had formed in my love or the decision I had made. And part of me was grateful, not because I wanted her to suffer, but because it meant she could leave this moment untouched by the knowledge of my pain. She could remain who she was, at least in that instant, while I took the damage silently upon myself. I placed a letter on her pillow, folded neatly like a fragile truth she might discover later, or maybe never. It was my final act of honesty, the quietest kind of goodbye. I didn't want confrontation. I didn't want tears or screams. I wanted nothing but the dignity of leaving with the memory of my love intact, even if it had been ignored, misunderstood, or taken for granted. I walked out the door without looking back, carrying only my bag and the ghost of what we had once shared. The night air wrapped around me like a cool shroud, and I breathed deeply, tasting freedom, regret, and the bitter aftertaste of a love destroyed, not by betrayal, not by violence, but by words spoken carelessly, encouraged by others, swallowed by laughter. As I made my way down the quiet streets, I thought about how fragile love is, how it can be nurtured in silence, built with care, and yet destroyed by whispers, encouragement, and tiny, seemingly harmless jokes. Words have power. They can lift, yes, but they can also crush. I had loved loudly. I had given everything I had, and she had destroyed me quietly, without ever raising her hand, without ever intending to, perhaps, but still destroyed me. I didn't look back. I didn't want to. Ada remained behind, unaware, untouched, still laughing with the friends who had whispered doubts into her heart. And I walked on, carrying the weight of my own love, my dignity intact, even as it bled quietly beneath my ribs. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked. The street lights flickered. I breathed again, slower this time, and thought to myself, let this be a lesson. Let this be a warning. Words carelessly given are sometimes the most lethal weapons of all. I saw her again years later. Not by chance, life has a way of putting you face to face with the ghosts of your past when you least expect it. She was sitting alone in a small cafe, a cup of tea untouched, her eyes distant, staring at the steam curling from the mug. She didn't see me at first. I watched her for a moment, silent, letting the years of pain and love wash over me. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but the light in her eyes was different. Softer, quieter, weighted with something I had felt myself, regret. I didn't approach immediately. I wanted her to remain in that moment, alone with her thoughts, because I already knew what they were. I had been there myself, staring at the memories of someone I had loved too much, realizing too late how fragile the bridges we build with trust and words can be. Her phone buzzed. She looked down and smiled faintly at a message, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives to themselves to hide a hollowness they cannot fill. I remembered all the times I had seen her laugh, sharing my love and sacrifices with her friends, my efforts unnoticed, my words unappreciated. And now she was quiet, silent, perhaps even wishing, quietly, that things could have been different. I walked closer, careful not to startle her. She looked up, and our eyes met. The recognition was immediate. "Kunle," she whispered, almost afraid. I didn't expect to see you here." I offered a small, controlled smile. "I didn't expect to be here either," I said, my voice low but steady. I wanted to let her see me, see the man I had become, not broken entirely, but tempered by years of learning what words, respect, and love can and cannot endure. She looked down again, fidgeting with her cup. I've thought about you," she said slowly, choosing each word as if it were dangerous. "Every day, actually. I wish I had said different things, done different things. I was wrong about so much." I nodded, listening. Part of me ached to tell her everything I had carried in silence, every hurt, every tear, every night I had spent awake wondering if love alone could keep us together. But I stayed quiet. There was no need for a long explanation. She had learned her lesson. Words once spoken cannot be taken back. They linger, they cut, and sometimes they destroy silently. "Kunle," she whispered again, voice almost breaking. Do you forgive me?" I studied her for a long moment. She wasn't the same girl I had once protected, laughed with, and loved more fiercely than life itself. She was different now, wiser perhaps, but still touched by the mistakes of the past. I took a slow breath. "I forgive you," I said, soft but firm. "Not because I can forget what happened, but because I have to. Holding on to it doesn't change anything." Her eyes filled with tears, and I could see the years of regret etched in every line of her face. She had finally realized what I had known all along, that love alone cannot survive disrespect, careless words, and encouragement from those who do not understand its value. We sat in silence for a while, letting the moment breathe. I watched her watch the world outside the cafe window. She was healed, in a way. She had rebuilt herself. Life had given her another chance, and she had taken it. And though a part of me still loved her quietly, I knew that our story had ended long ago, not with the betrayal of the body, but with the betrayal of words, the ones she had laughed, shared, and allowed to chip away at the foundation of our love. I finally spoke, my voice carrying the weight of everything I had learned. Ada, some marriages aren't destroyed by betrayal or cheating. They are destroyed by words. Words that go unnoticed, words that are repeated, words that are taken to others instead of kept where they belong. Words that erode respect, that chip away at love until there is nothing left. She nodded, her lips trembling. "I understand now," she whispered. "I understand, Kunle." I gave her one last, small, quiet smile and turned to leave. There was nothing more to say. No apologies would change what had been lost. No explanations could undo the years of silence, the nights on the couch, the love given quietly and ignored. I walked away carrying the dignity of my love, the lessons of my pain, and the certainty that some wounds are inflicted not by what people do, but by what they say and what they fail to protect. And as I stepped into the light outside, I whispered to myself, almost as if to the world, "Remember this: words, once spoken without care, can destroy everything you hold most dear. Protect them, treasure them, or one day you may watch someone walk away quietly, leaving only memories behind." I want you to listen carefully, because this is something I've carried in my heart for a long time. I hope you've learned something from my story, not just about love, but about the power of words. Never ever let careless words reach the ears of friends. Not jokes, not comparisons, not the whispers of what you think about someone you love. Those words once spoken are like arrows. They fly fast, and even if you don't see the damage immediately, they pierce hearts. They wound silently, and they linger longer than you could imagine. Love silently. Protect your marriage. Cherish respect. These are not just words. They are the pillars of every bond that wants to last. I loved Ada more than I've ever loved anything in my life, and yet, even that love wasn't enough to hold her when respect had already begun to crumble around us. I tried to speak, I tried to show, I tried to hold on, but I learned the hard way that love alone cannot repair what words can destroy. And now, I want to ask you something. In your own point of view, do you think I did the right thing by leaving her? I left quietly, without confrontation, without drama. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't accuse. I simply walked away, carrying my dignity, my heart, and the lessons I had learned the hardest way possible. Some people might say I should have fought harder, should have stayed, should have pleaded for her to understand. Others might say I abandoned her, that I didn't try enough. But I'll tell you what I felt. Every day I stayed, my love was ignored, my sacrifices invisible. Every word I spoke, every effort I made, was laughed at, shared, dissected by others who encouraged her to believe she deserved better than what I could give. Could I have begged her to see me differently? Perhaps. Could I have demanded respect? Maybe. But I realized that respect, like love, cannot be demanded. It must be given freely, or it is nothing. When I left, I carried my heart, yes, but I carried it with clarity. I had loved loudly, and I had been destroyed quietly. And sometimes walking away is not cowardice. Sometimes walking away is the only way to preserve what little dignity remains when love is met with disregard. I want you to imagine yourself in my shoes. Imagine giving everything to someone, standing by them, protecting them, sacrificing, and watching them share your heart with the ears of others as though it were a joke, as though your efforts were meaningless. Could you stay? Could you continue to pour yourself into someone who no longer sees you? I hope you'll answer honestly in your heart, because the lesson here is not just mine. It is for all of us who love, all of us who speak carelessly, all of us who assume that words are harmless when they are not. Protect your words. Protect your marriage. Protect the hearts of those who trust you with their love. And sometimes, when love is met with disregard, the kindest thing you can do for both yourself and the one you love is to walk away quietly, carry the lessons, and keep your heart intact. I leave you with this thought. Love is beautiful, but it is fragile. Respect is essential, but it is earned. And words are more dangerous than we realize. Never underestimate them. Never underestimate the quiet power they have to build or destroy. Now I ask you again, quietly, softly, in your own point of view, did I do the right thing by leaving her? Think about it. Think carefully. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand why sometimes silence, dignity, and walking away are the strongest acts of love a person can ever commit.